they will not be convinced, even if someone should rise from the dead. This is good foreshadowing on the part of Jesus. Even if someone should rise from the dead. How many in our world have heard the words of Jesus, have been told the story of his death and resurrection, have been told about the salvation which exists in that saving act, and are not convinced? How many among us somewhat dismiss the story, or, like the Pharisee, find ourselves kind of saying, yes, but? For the Pharisee would have been a good person. He would have been well regarded. He would have been a leader of his branch of the religious tradition. And yet we know from the words of the prophet Amos in our first reading, across all of Scripture, we know that people, humans, are very prone to ignore, to not acknowledge, to pretend they didn't hear the words and the facts and the things we want to bypass. The rich man, clothed in sumptuous clothes and eating more food than he knew with what to do, somehow did not see or recognize or acknowledge Lazarus, who laid at his very front gate. He could go about his world and his life, not recognizing the abject poverty and the deep human need that lay across his doorstep. They invented new instruments of music. They drank wine by the bowlful. They dined on lambs from the flock and stall-fattened veal. But about the ruin of Joseph, the sons and daughters of Israel, they did not care at all. Humans have this capacity to ignore or not acknowledge or not see that which we don't want to see. Jesus' warning to us and to all who listen to his words is that there is a time, there will be a day, when the judgment will befall us. When this deep abyss, this chasm, might exist between us and the fires of Hades and those who rest in the bosom of Abraham. And that abyss, that chasm, will not be created by anything more than our choices, our actions, and our inactivity in the face of human suffering and loss. This week in our weekly Lectio Divina, as we pray through the readings as a staff, we tripped upon the same phrase, and it's the one that has bothered people or confused people for generations, for hundreds and thousands of years now. That as Lazarus lay covered with sores at the door of the rich man at his front gate, even dogs licked his sore. And there's a question, is this a sign of how low he has sunk, or is it a sign of comfort? And in fact, it seems to be a little of both. Dogs in the ancient Near East were not pets. There were guard dogs and they were chained up. They wouldn't have been coming by. And then there were strays and mongrels. So yes, the lowest of the low. Something to which non-Jewish people were often compared, dogs. They took care of Lazarus. So yes, the lowest of the low, but that we know that that dogs lick wounds to help with healing. Science has told us that there is actually an enzyme which assists with healing in a dog's saliva. So there is a sense of comfort, and yet there's missing in our translation the transition word that essentially, and even dogs came and licked his sores. And this and even is a Semitic comparison. There was this and there was this. There was the gross indifference on the part of the rich man, and even the lowest of the low, the lowest form of life in the world as they knew it, took care of him. In our world, we will be endlessly challenged with how to take care of the needs of those around us. There is no right way, there is no guaranteed method of meeting the needs of those we encounter. We know sometimes that giving money is not actually a helpful solution, but that doesn't mean we don't give money. But it may mean that we put it through people who take care of others, who know what's going on, whether it be the Peter McVerry Trust or Cross Care or some agency that can help make good determinations. But that doesn't mean that when we see an issue, that we don't figure out what we tried to do. Earlier in my life, when I was a seminarian, I spent a summer at a soup kitchen in Phoenix, Arizona. We fed 800 people a night. We served on the street. We cooked in the backyard of a house. It was quite an amazing operation for 800 meals. And afterwards, those who helped make the meals, many of them from the wealthy suburb of Scottsdale, would come to the backyard where we would eat our dinner, and we'd dine with 14 homeless people with whom we lived and shared a house. And we would discuss whether what we were doing was actually helpful. And sometimes it was the homeless men and women who challenged the efficacy of simply giving food. And sometimes it was the wealthy businessman or woman. But at the end of almost every conversation, Father Michael Baxter would simply say, I don't know if what we're doing is actually helping, but I know this. They were hungry today. There are people who are hungry today. There are people in need. There are people who are starving for care and attention. And we as Christians are tasked to notice, to care, and to do what we can to make their lives